Jai Anilo Premadano Karma Kacho All glories to the Son of the Lord. All glories to the Son of the Lord. All glories to the Son of the Lord. Gaura Premanande. So we gave some drawing books for this book. Yes. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 Yes. This is a new text, you just go to it. Right?
Yes, I know it, but Bhaktivedanta said that he already told you about this verse, so I wrote back the same verse.
Yes. I didn't check the day true. I did not check the day when I told you what verse was.
You didn't check the day, what does that mean? Right now, it's an accurate process. I tell from people that actually it's easy to do everything yourself and it doesn't look quicker and better. I'm not going to change this verse, we already did it. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 17, Text 22. I will change the order. Raja Vacha, Dharmam Pravishi, Dharmagna, Dharmosi, Visha Rupatrik, Yat Adharma, Tas Hanam, Suchakaskapi Tat Habit. Raja Uvacha. The king said, Dharma, religion, Pravishi, as you speak, Dharma, Jnana. O one who knows the codes of religion, Dharma, the personality of religion, Asi, you are, Risha Rupa Tik, in the disguise of a bull, Yat, whatever, Dharma Kritaha, one who acts irreligiously, Sthanam, place, Suchakasya, of the identifier, Api, also, Tat, that, becomes. Translation. The king said, O you, who are in the form of a bull, you know the truth of religion, and you are speaking according to the principle that the destination intended for the perpetrator of irreligious acts is also intended for one who identifies the perpetrator. You are no other than the personality of religion. This table wants to be cut. It's too long. Gotta cut it somewhere. Everything possible. Otherwise, don't do it. It's too long. Now you can repeat. The king said, O you who are in the form of a bull, you know the truth of religion, and you are speaking according to the principle that the destination intended for the perpetrator of irreligious acts, ladies, I don't know you, is also intended for one who identifies the perpetrator. You are no other than the personality of religion. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. A devotee's conclusion is that no one is directly responsible for being a benefactor or mischief monger without the sanction of the Lord. Therefore, he does not consider anyone to be directly responsible for such action. But in both the cases, he takes it for granted that either benefit or loss is God's sent. And thus it is His grace. In case of benefit, no one will deny that it is God's sent. But in the case of loss or reverses, one becomes doubtful about how the Lord could be so unkind to his devotee as to put him in great difficulty. Jesus Christ was seemingly put into such great difficulty, being crucified by the ignorant, but he was never angry at the mischief mongers. That is the way of accepting a thing, either favorable or unfavorable. Thus, for a devotee, the identifier is equally a sinner, like the mischief monger. By God's grace, the devotee tolerates all reverses. Maharaj Parikshit observed this, and therefore he could understand that the bull was no other than the personality of religion himself. In other words, the devotee has no suffering at all, because so-called suffering is also God's grace for a devotee who sees God in everything. The cow and bull never placed any complaint before the king for being tortured by the personality of Kali, although everyone lodges such complaints before the state authorities. The extraordinary behavior of the bull made the king conclude that the bull was certainly the personality of religion, for no one else could understand the finer intricacies of the codes of religion. So the scene preceding this text is that Maharaj Pritchett was on tour because it was the duty of the administrative head to see that everything is right in the kingdom and to take action, appropriate action if it's not. Because an administrator incurs reactions for whatever goes on under his jurisdiction. That means that an administrator gets the consequences, both good and bad. So, not only an administrator, but a parent should also understand that this is similarly applicable. In fact, anybody who has dependents of any type is responsible for the actions of the dependents. So parents should take note, husbands should take note, teachers should take note, gurus should take note, temple administrators should take note. Unfortunately, the officials of the government are not present. Otherwise, they should especially take note. It's not by chance that when you see a before and after picture of the U.S. President, after 4 years term in office, they look like a different person. Because they're incurring the sins of the nation. Maharaj Pritchett, of course, was a highly qualified king and very vigilant. He went about on his course through the kingdom, and when he was touring, he came to observe that a cow and bull were being beaten by a low-class shudra. And so he took off his sword and he was going to execute the sinner. And at that time he fought to it, so he inquired of the bull what is the cause of the situation. And the bull, being Dharma, the personality of religion, would not identify Maharaj, would not identify Kali as the culprit. And that's the situation as it comes in this text. But the previous texts, the Dharma, the bull, gave a number of explanations of what philosophers say is the cause of action and reaction, or the causes of someone's suffering. In other words, the bull described a number of philosophical possibilities, but he did not, as one of them, say, it's Kali that's doing it. So Prabhupada and the text today are explicating why Maharaj, why the bull, Dharma, did not do what was the most obvious thing to do. Because when you're getting directly beaten by someone, it's pretty natural to say, he did it. That's all he had to do. He had to finger Kali, and Kali would have been wiped out. He didn't do that. So, he didn't do that. So, the first thing the king observed is that anyone who is so intelligent must be a great personality. So he could understand, I'm not just speaking to a bull. Of course, when you speak to a bull, you know you're not just speaking to a bull, because bulls don't just speak. So the first thing he knew is that I'm not just speaking to a bull. This bull is more than a bull. He is religion personified, speaking to him. Whether or not we want to consider whether this bull was actually who the bull is this an allegorical bull or not? Hard to say. There is an allegory used in the Bhagavatam. And there's no mention particularly one way or the other about that in Prabhupada's purport. Is this actually a bull? And is this some kind of a miraculous activity that a bull can suddenly speak? Of course, we know that Hanuman's a monkey and he speaks. Not an ordinary monkey, but he speaks. And there are examples of practically every type of living being speaking. So, it may be. In either case, it doesn't change the substance of what he speaks. So I don't think we need to lose, any sleep over it. We shouldn't get too worked up about the fact that this is really foolishness, because how can Paul speak? Therefore, we have to discount what he said. Let's see what he says. To judge something, by what he says. And what he said makes a lot of sense. He speaks in such a way, as I said, in which he refuses to identify color. Now, Maharaj Krishna evaluates, he analyzes what the bull has done, and he says, you are wise because you understand that just as it is sinful for a heinous act to be performed by someone, it is similarly sinful to identify that person as the cause of your suffering. Why? Because there are many causes for suffering. You don't suffer anything that you're not meant to suffer. Now we should consider this point. If you've got a cold or a fever, or if you, whatever your position may be, it may be very unfortunate to get in a position. How did you get into that position? Unless you did something in the past. Now, this type of philosophy disturbs a lot of people because it seems to imply that you don't do anything as a response to your suffering condition, or that you see people in a suffering condition and you just tell them, just like if you see people in a horrible war in Cambodia, let's say, where the Khmer Rouge wipes out millions of people, and we just say, tough luck, it's your karma. That kind of response seems to be very callous, very inconsiderate. So sometimes this argument, well, it's just your karma, or samsara, this is just the endless wheel turning, where people are suffering or enjoying according to their past actions, and everything is interrelated, interdependent, all circumstances are interdependent. There may be some truth to this, but it doesn't seem that that's a very human response. Just like Prabhupada said, that he could never, even as a child, he could never stand to see someone suffer. He wanted to put people out of their suffering condition. If we see a starving person, we don't stand there and say, according to Bhagavad Gita, the reason you are starving is because you caused somebody enemy to starve in the past. What we do is we feed them prasad. And after feeding them, then we explain why they were put into that situation, so that they won't, again, create further karma for themselves. There's nothing wrong with presenting philosophy, but, the philosophy has to be digested. And if someone's starving to death, they can't digest words. They need to be fed food. Then they can be fed words. And very often people, especially nowadays, they take more account of doing work for someone on the basis of physical welfare than they do on the basis of educational welfare. Of course, we are primarily educators. That's our main business, to educate people. Because right now, Prabhupada said that this is a misguided civilization, which means that there's no head. So the greatest necessity is to provide direction, guidance to the people of the world. That is the greatest need of the time, to give direction, and therefore the class of Brahmins is required to guide society. And ISKCON is especially enjoined by Prabhupada to create a class of Brahmins. The devotees, the initiated devotees, are meant to come from that status. That's why we follow these four principles. That's why we worship the deity. That's why we chant Hare Krishna. All of these activities are meant to elevate you to the brahminical status. That doesn't mean that the whole world can necessarily immediately come from the status. Therefore, we have Varnashram Dharma, Daivi Varnashram, in which we encourage people to act according to their particular propensities, nature. But we have to guide them. And in order to be able to guide them, we have to be Brahmins. Brahmin means who knows the truth and who practices the truth. There's no use knowing the truth if you don't practice it. There is some use to it, but it's not nearly as convincing as you speak that don't act properly. So a Brahmin is one who acts according to what he speaks. So everyone has to know the philosophy of Brahma and then practice it. So Dharma here, the bull, certainly was doing that. He knew what is the conclusion of Scripture. That's what Maharaj said. You know the principles. You know the principle means you know what Scripture says. You are Shastra Vid. You know. You are a knower of the Vedas, and you applied it properly. Now this is a very extraordinary point. That if you point out someone is guilty of something, then you become guilty also. Why? Because you show your ignorance. You become a person who creates pain for others. If the bull had said, Kali is to blame, Kali got punished, but we have to understand that it wasn't just Kali that was responsible. There are many causes for a person's suffering, and these causes are pointed out here in the previous text. What are they? Here. It says, some philosophers who do not say that one's own self is responsible for his personal happiness and distress. Is it so? Yes. There is some truth. This is text 19. There is some truth. You are the cause of what has happened in the past. You are the cause of what has happened in the present by what you did in the past. There's some truth. What else? Others say that superhuman powers are responsible. Who are superhuman powers? Demigods. Is there some truth to that? Yes. It is stated that even a slight movement of the eyelid is ultimately under the jurisdiction of a particular demigod. So demigods definitely are controlling situations in this world. Interesting how there's a similar, understanding of like a house. This world is seen as the lower house, lower part of the house, lower floor. The upper part of the house is where the gods are working. And of course the Christians see this as like a big war going on between the powers of good and the powers of evil. And that determines what happens here. Whatever we see here is a result of a war going on. And when the powers of good conquer and are victorious, then it will bring, happiness, and the kingdom of God will be ushered. But we don't exactly agree with this view, but it does have some similarities in the sense that here some higher powers are mentioned here. Superhuman powers, demigods. Others say that the activity is responsible. The action, just taking it right on the face value. Action, whatever you do, that causes a reaction automatically. And gross materials maintain nature is the cause, right? Just chemical combination, material combination, atoms interacting. Every one of these things is true. You cannot deny any one of these. They're all part of the cause of an action and reaction. Then there are other thinkers. The next text says we believe that no one can ascertain the cause of distress by argument. You cannot use argument or logic, nor by imagination to express it nor expressing it by words. So you judge for yourself, it says. Now, here in this text, what does Prabhupada say is the ultimate cause? Krishna. God. Because without the sanction of God, as we often say, not a blade of grass can move. And therefore, Behind everything, ultimately, is the will of God. And especially so in the case of a devotee. You are not ordinary. Even if you chant crummy rounds, even if you are not the strictest devotee, you're a devotee. Once you are devoted to God, Krishna takes charge and changes. The Prabhupada said, when you clap your hands in the kirtan, the lines change on your hands. Your fortune changes. So devotees are no longer under the power of Devi, or the Maya material energy. Now they're under the Devi, the divine energy. And Atmanastam Parvataivam Dvartatam, taking shelter of the spiritual energy of the Lord. And Krishna then deals with a devotee in a very particular way. And what is the main way that Krishna deals with his devotees? By what? When Krishna is very kind to someone, his devotee, what does he do? Say it louder.
Takes everything away.
Good. Krishna is very kind, he takes everything away. He may give everything also. When does Krishna give everything to his devotee? When does Krishna give everything to his devotee?
This is the responsible one. He just reminds.
Yeah, when they won't misuse it, then he gives everything. If by giving it corrupts his devotee, why should he give? If he cares about his devotee. But this is a tricky thing, because most devotees do pray for a lot of facilities. But they should understand that as long as there's a slight desire in your heart for enjoying those facilities, Krishna's going to withhold them. He's only going to withhold them to the degree, he's only going to provide them to the degree that you actually don't care anymore to enjoy them. And that's not easy. Usually what we pray for is what we want to enjoy. A pure devotee, however, doesn't pray like that. A pure devotee prays for the facility to be able to help others with Krishna consciousness. And Krishna provides for such persons. So, here it says in text 20, purport, Bhishmadev correctly estimated the inconceivable actions of the Lord. The conclusion is therefore that the sufferings of the representative of religion and the representative of the earth, as present before Maharaj Parikshit, planned to prove that Maharaj Parikshit was the ideal executive head because he knew well how to give protection to the cows, the earth, and the Brahmins' religious principles, the two pillars of spiritual advancement. So, this circumstance which Maharaj Parikshit came upon was arranged by God, by Krishna. Similarly, the Bhagavad Gita circumstance where Arjuna is put into an awkward position on the battlefield was arranged by Krishna. Krishna arranges difficulties for his devotees. He doesn't make the path of devotion easy. We want the path to be easy. No, it won't be that way. If it's only easy, in fact, it's never easy. Because even for advanced devotees, it's not easy. Because they still get obstacles to teach others. Why do we get obstacles? Krishna does use us to teach others, but not in the same way he uses pure devotees. A conditioned soul should not think that this is all happening for the sake of others. It's mainly happening for your sake, because you're conditioned, you're mistaken, you have misconceptions. So Krishna has to purify those misconceptions, otherwise you will not be able to go back to Godhead. And the fact is that Krishna also uses these situations as an example for others. Just like we see in the case of Junior Haridas. Small, minor discrepancy, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu dealt very severely with. And everyone became very cautious as a result. Now, each circumstance is different. Every circumstance is different. So it's not that by giving that example, everybody should think that, my solution is what Junior Haridas did. No. Each person has to respond in a different way. There are different responses. But what is the main point here? The main point is Krishna is trying to purify, to correct, teach. So we should not feel in any way unhappy when we are put into reverse circumstances. Rather, what should we think? Krishna is coming closer. When we are put into difficulty, it means that Krishna cares about us. The worst thing is when you don't get put into difficulties. Neither you get facility nor difficulty. That neutral condition is not at all very helpful. Difficult times are a blessing in disguise from Krishna. Krishna is entering into your life. Krishna is beginning to help you to straighten out problems. Viewed in this way, nothing is unfavorable. A Vaishnava does not take any circumstance as being unfavorable for his or her advancement in Krishna consciousness. What is Krishna trying to teach me? That is what we must ask ourselves in any situation. In other words, the devotee has no suffering, Prabhupada says, at all, because so-called suffering is also God's grace for a devotee who sees God in everything. The cow and bull never placed any complaint before the king for being tortured by the personality of Kali, although everyone lodges such complaints before the state authorities. The extraordinary behavior of the bull made the king conclude that the bull was certainly the personality of religion. For no one else would understand the finer intricacies of the codes of religion. We are meant to understand these finer intricacies of the codes of religion. Unless one is guided by Shastra, one will not know how to behave properly. Then we fall into what is mentioned previously. What is that? Speculation. Cannot proceed, cannot ascertain what the causes are. We have to be guided by Shastra. Shastra does not lie. Shastra does not lie, but neither can we try to manipulate the scriptures. In one purport, Prabhupada explains in the Chaitamrita what is the way to speak according to Shastra by giving direct meaning. Not indirect meaning, not secondary meaning, but primary meaning. So, actions that we live by, this is very important here. Each of us are put into so many situations, I think daily, where we suffer apparently at the hands of another person. Persons, circumstances. Now, after hearing today's lecture, we should think twice before we put the blame on someone. This person is causing me to suffer. We should understand that actually everything is ultimately caused by Krishna, for my purification. And if we do that, we at least don't incur further karma by causing suffering to another person. Because why is someone giving you trouble? Stop and think about it. There's all kinds of things behind that person, which are pushing that person to act. So just by saying it's that person, that's so shallow. There's so much behind that person. Just like if a small child smacks the mother in the face, the mother doesn't smash the child back. Because that's a sign of ignorance on the part of the child. The mother understands, applies higher understanding, and tries to deal with the child accordingly. So these are the lessons. The whole purpose of these lessons ultimately is to teach us tolerance. This is a very, very good lesson of tolerance that the Buddha is being personally viewed so much. It's very tolerant. It is advised that unless we learn to tolerate, we will always be using our energy for temporary adjustments. So many adjustments we make. If you can learn to tolerate summer, winter, just like now it is getting cold, so people find it intolerable. But you can think, why did this cold come? This is arranged by Krishna to teach me toleration, steadiness and devotion. I feel exhausted, I can't finish my rounds. Krishna is trying to teach you to tolerate tiredness. I'm very hungry, but you may not be able to eat on a fast day. You have to tolerate this. I want to enjoy sex life, but there's a consequence. So you have to tolerate the itch. It goes on and on and on and on. Life has to be tolerated. If you don't, you become involved in the cycle of samsara, birth and death, based on action and reaction. You have to be very, very tolerant. This is the quality, sadhu-bhushan, of a saint person. A bull was very tolerant because he was very knowledgeable, which means that one of the things which will help you be tolerant is knowledge, wisdom. It's hard to get much wisdom if you don't open Prabhupada's books and read them. It's hard to get much wisdom if you don't listen to some tapes and lectures. It's hard to get understanding if you don't chant Hare Krishna. It's hard to understand and put it all together if you don't associate with devotees. All of these things are required, just like now is the month of Damodar. Everyone should come and offer a life daily to Damodar. I see many people have not come, but there's a ceremony every evening, 8 o'clock. It doesn't take much to get in here, especially those of you who live here, live nearby here. If you can't stay for all the prayers, stay for 5 minutes. But you must offer light in the month of Kartik. It's very, very beneficial. If you can do it. If it's, you live far away, that's understandable. But if you're living right nearby or a few minutes away, there's really no excuse. This is a great opportunity for us. Kartik Vrata. You're supposed to make some vow. Don't make your vow. I promise you I won't come. That's a vow. Dear Krishna, I promise I won't come. That is a vow. You see, I fulfilled my vow and broke it with that. That's not what it means to make a vow. So we should take part in the process. Now, next week is a very important festival, which I hope all of you are planning to go to Houston for, Governor Puja. You may say, well, I'm not going to go to Houston because I'm going to do it here. You save my money. Why should I spend all that money in gas? I can just do it here. Well, I don't think it's the same. I think our Governor Sheila has come here to Texas, not just to Houston. And I think it is our duty to offer our respects, certainly Lake Giriyaj during the month of Kartik, chant his glories, get his darshan. It's also a nice opportunity to visit our Houston community. So I do hope that you are to mark this day. It is next Saturday, it is not Sunday. And it is at noon. The Yusa devotees have very kindly made this festival at a time and a day so that all the Taoist devotees can easily come. They didn't make it on Sunday, they made it on Saturday. They didn't make it Saturday night, so you don't even have to stay overnight. You can drive down there in the morning. The festival will start around 10:30. Take part in the whole festival. There'll be over 1,000 crepes offered. Get Mahaprashanam, have big kirtans, circumambulate, mix with the devotees a little bit, drive back. I think that if you say it's a lot of effort, well, I don't think it's nearly what it would take to go all the way to Vrindavan to do it. Imagine if you had to buy a plane ticket, how much that costs. You're going to buy one for every one of the members of your family. That costs you $3,000. You'd have a terrible case of jet lag if you didn't stay there for at least a week. That means you have to miss work for a week, which is another, $300, $400, $500. And that's very expensive. We're up to $3,000 to $4,000 already. And how much does it cost to go down and back and forth with gas? $20, $30 max. Right? Not much. All the family lives and outings couldn't get out of balance. And to see here, I have a lot to do. I'm going to go down Friday. I'll leave Friday and do a Friday evening program there. So those of you who would like to, you can also try to do that. And then just come back Saturday, still out there. You can still sleep in Sunday morning. So you're not getting deprived of anything. You're going so merciful. Are there any questions? Yes.
This idea that the person who identifies the wrongdoer carries on carries some of the things. In the understanding of Krishna consciousness, we say someone who murders somebody should be killed as capital punishment. But it would all break down and say, well, no one wants to identify the murderer because everybody's afraid and say, oh, well, I'll be against some of that.
No, someone must do that. God does it. And God's representatives do it. So if you're in a position of authority, that must be done. It's not that we allow a murderer to go free. Nor will Parikshit Maharaj allow Kali to go free. Just because the bull didn't identify doesn't mean that Maharaj Parikshit couldn't identify. It's his duty to. As the bull would have incurred sin for identifying, Maharaj Parikshit would have incurred sin for not identifying who the culprit was. That's why as a guru, it's my business to correct people. I have to correct my disciples. If I don't do that, I become, culpable for whatever wrongs are in them, that disciple. That's what it means to be a guru. The temple leaders, when they see some nonsense, that's why I'm always pointing this out, pointing so many mistakes out to the temple administrators here. As soon as I see a light bulb out, I hope you saw that there is one out here. As soon as I see a light bulb out, I say replace it. Because it's my duty to see that this temple room, which is Radhakal Chandra's palace, their home, is maintained. That's my duty. If I see that there's a mess out on the property, if I see someone dumped a bunch of old furniture out in front of their property, and every single guest who comes here has to see that garbage, it's my duty to say something. And actually, I have to say this. I have to become very sarcastic to get responses from people. If I don't do that, then I become culpable of the wrongdoing. Now, as an elder, I could put everyone here responsible. I mean to say, many of you are elders. You could also be held responsible. It's not just me that's responsible. A servant is also responsible to identify something wrong. If you see water leaking out of the pipe, you have to say something. You can't say it's the karma of the pipe. It's the karma of whatever, you've got to do something about it. You see a mess, clean it up. People go by here thinking, it's not my duty, it's not my business. I don't hold to that philosophy. If anybody is in difficulty, whatever their problem is, it's everybody's problem. It's like I saw, our devotee here come with his two daughters. It's my duty to say, okay, the children should be helped so he can listen to the class and they can do something that's according to their level. If I just sit here and say, I don't care, it's not my business, then how will we advance in spiritual life? How will the children advance? So it's not just that I'm supposed to see these things. Everybody's supposed to see these things. What are we reading, Prabhupada negative for? We're supposed to be reading about Prabhupada's life this year and every year because we see exemplary behavior. So everyone should become, advanced in Krishna consciousness, which means to care about, not only about big things, but details. Because if you do care about big things, it'll be shown by how much you care about details. And when you have an atmosphere where so many people are caring, that's very attractive. That is Krishna consciousness. That works. Another question? Yes, Rasi.
You were saying how somebody suffers it is because of most karma and other reasons. You can see great personalities like Haridas Thakur being gained so many marketplaces. He was a liberated personality, yet he had to go through so much suffering.
Yeah.
Why is that?
I thought we just spoke about why pure devotees meant to suffer.
In this case, looks like a very gross act on such a pure devotee.
You think that Jesus Christ being nailed to a cross was not a gross act?
This, you can understand why, devotees were neophyte getting reactions, but it's quite unacceptable, same way for great personalities.
If a neophyte devotee gets nailed to a cross, would anybody care about it? If so-and-so got beaten and flogged, such and such murdered was beaten and flogged for 23 villages, what would anybody think? They'd say, yeah, he deserved it. If an unimportant person undergoes a trial, a tribulation, who cares? Just like, O.J. Simpson. If O.J. Simpson hadn't been a great professional athlete in the past, do you think anybody would have cared about the trial? That happens all the time. What happened, whatever the case may have been, whoever was guilty, etc., we're not going to try to determine that now. But, husbands and wives cheating on each other is like the most commonplace occurrence in today's society. And every case doesn't come to public attention, as this case did. Why was it so important? Because of who the person was. So if something happens to an important person, the whole world notices. Whatever a great person does, the whole world takes note. Whatever exemplary acts he performs, all the world pursues. Come on. Haridas Thakur did it and never once complained. Therefore, everybody records this in history and praises Haridas Thakur. If Joe Schmo did it, who would care? Who would know? Krishna uses his pure devotee. Yes, Nandi.
So good. Speaking about tolerance, is there a distinction between being tolerant and being, in other words, on the guise of being tolerant, someone could be abused or mistreated or exploited?
Yeah, so no, because the point is, Krishna didn't, no. Your body, for example, your mind, your body, your life is already given to someone else. So for yourself, you can tolerate all kinds of abuse, but since your body and mind, you don't belong to you anymore, they belong to Krishna, you have to do something about it. It's not your property anymore. You see, you can let someone steal your property, but if I give you my property to take care of, you can't let anybody do anything to it. You have to guard it. So since you've already dedicated your body, mind, and life to Krishna, it doesn't belong to you anymore. So now you have to protect it. It's Krishna's property in your care. Therefore, we defend if someone attacks. That's why one of the things you have to do is to be careful not to get sick. When Prabhupada heard that the devotee was sick, he said, that's Maya. Because the body doesn't belong to you. You're maintaining Krishna's body. If you let it get sick, it means that, you didn't care. Sometimes I'm amazed. I see people come in here, it was 42 degrees this morning, and people were in Mangalarti in a t-shirt. And I couldn't believe it. I mean, I understand some people are hot-blooded. I respect that. Certain people are more hot-blooded than others. But, we should be careful not to get ill. I mean, it may not even, despite our care, we may not be able to prevent it from happening, but we should take care. Not to allow things that disturb us in our service. We're Krishna's servants. How can we allow things to stand in the way of our service? That's one of the meanings of being determined. Undeterred. Devotional service is supposed to be undeterred. You have to be very, very determined. So speaking of determination, it's 8:30 determined in plus 5:30. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada, more Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, more Premanand.